At a time when connecting with audiences digitally is more important than ever, and we're certainly all living on this digital planet together, today we will explore immediate and longer-term digital messaging and practices for organizations of all sizes when engaging through website, email, and social media. Throughout the presentation, please remember to send us your questions via the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen, and we will do our best to answer as many questions as possible. We'll be responding to your questions at the breaks, and there will be a longer period at the end of the presentation. Our partner in today's presentation is Resnico & Associates. R&A are a leader in providing strategic communications and consulting services to arts organizations around the world. And in New York State, they've worked with organizations such as the Brooklyn Public Library, the Corning Museum of Glass, Magazzino Italian Art in Cold Spring, and the Bronx Museum of the Arts, to name just a few. It gives me great pleasure to welcome to your screens Resnico & Associates Vice President Josh Balber and R&A's Digital Marketing and Social Media Manager, Soheil Shah. They will take us through today's topics, COVID, communications, and beyond. Josh and Soheil, over to you.
Thanks, Mara, for the kind introduction, and thanks for inviting us to be here today, and to the entire NYSCA team for putting the NYSCA Presents webinar series together. And thanks to all of the hundreds of you from across the state who are turning in. We've all been on too many Zoom calls and so many webinars. We appreciate you sharing your screen time. You can tell I have a 10-year-old. Some of us have had digital strategies in place for a long time. Some are newly jumping in. But on March 12th, our work, just like yours, changed dramatically with mandatory physical distancing. I don't need to tell you about it. You know what you're going through. The importance of the online community and the online communications came sharply into focus for everyone. And as we all talk about re-entry now, there'll be a new normal when in-person visits can happen. There'll be a new familiarity among your audiences with engaging digitally that has never before been the case. So Soheil's been managing much of this digital work for our clients and is going to walk through how to effectively leverage digital platforms now during physical distancing, but also putting structures in place that are sustainable for when you do open up and for whatever this new future looks like. He's going to share top-line strategies and tips for arts organizations, regardless of size, because we know today the audience scales small to large, to sustain digital presence that will keep your audiences engaged and energized, maybe even grow new audiences, that's the goal, serve your own goals, and maybe, and most importantly, work within your organization's capacity, because we know everybody is stretched fairly thin these days. So without anything else, and without further ado, Soheil, I'll throw it over to you.
Thank you, Josh, and thank you, Mara. It's great to be here virtually with you all today. Excited to really dive deep into what digital looks like right now during this situation and what it's going to become in the future. As Josh briefly touched upon in today's webinar, we are going to cover the core elements of what comprise of a strong digital presence, and then we will do a deeper dive into updates you can make to your website today, ways in which you can optimize your email, and strategies to really enhance and take your social media to the next level, keeping in mind what we're seeing in this environment and all the great trends that are happening for engagement. Quickly, before we jump and dive right into all those specifics, I do want to just mention something that we have begun seeing in the last few weeks that has really informed our approach to how arts and culture organizations should be responding on digital platforms in the most effective and strategic way possible. In March, we did see that glut of content being pushed out. I'm sure you got tons of emails yourself. This makes sense. Everyone was at home, and by default, people were spending a lot of time online. However, as early as late April, we have been seeing that it's become increasingly more and more difficult to reach these audiences on platforms simply because of the overwhelming amount of information that is continuing to be shared. So we're really highlighting the shift at the get-go because these four elements that we see on the slide right now are the core things that are going to help you have a strong digital presence and are going to be able to help you cut the crowd no matter what platform you're working with. These always apply. So with that, let's dive right into the first element of a strong digital presence, which is sharing only valuable information that is directly relevant to your mission and what you do as an organization. Right now, you know, I think lots of organizations, lots of people want to be sharing social media content about anything and everything out there, but the most effective content that's going to work is what speaks to you as an organization. Valuable information right now is your status updates on opening and closing, ways in which audiences can engage with your organization from home, whether that's images of works of art from exhibitions that may have been canceled, videos from past performances, online reading materials, and even donation call to actions. Here is a great example of this in action from the Western New York Book Art Center. It's a nonprofit based in Buffalo. They are sharing information that directly relates to their mission. If you read closely, they are promoting their bookbinding kits and how they're available. So again, what is it that you're providing to your audiences, and speak directly to that. The second element of a strong and really effective digital presence is having a consistent visual look across all your platforms. The goal is to give your audiences the same familiarity on your website and as they would get that on your social media or email and vice versa. A really simple and effective way to achieve this that's unfortunately not often leveraged is by leaning into your organization's logo, font, brand colors, and using those across materials posted online. Here we have another effective example of this in action from Ballet Hispanico School of Dance. The left is their website, and the right is a Instagram graphic they created. Note how the use of font, the black and red colors that are their primary colors, and their logo contribute to that consistent identity, even though we're communicating on two different platforms.
So Heel, I have a question.
Yeah.
Is there anything specific organizations should be thinking about when choosing images for their platforms at this current time?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question, because right now we do have to also think about many of us, all of us cannot really get into our physical spaces. We are in a closed environment right now. So the first thing I would say is when you do share images, ensure they are directly relevant and connected to the accompanying text. Right now, it's easy to just share whatever images you have. So we are seeing some instances where we're talking about indoor galleries, but the post is actually about outdoor spaces. So be cognizant about that. And then also look at holistically the assets you have available. It's always great to share high resolution images, but if a photo speaks to who you are, even if it's low res, even if it's an iPhone photo, even if it's something you took on Snapchat, but it really resonates with who you are as an organization, you should feel comfortable to share that right now. If you do happen to have really professional images on hand, that's also great. What I would look out for right now, and what we're seeing have the most engagement on social media platforms, are those with high color contrast, natural lighting, and any unique objects, whether it's rare books, sculptures, stills from past performances, something that resonates with your organization.
And so Heel, I was on the Ballet Hispanico website yesterday, and I saw that, to your point, there's a lot of homegrown video of the dancers in their apartments. It was fantastic. It felt like so immediate, not too overproduced, and really genuine. Yeah. So
it was all genuine and organic. I highly recommend everyone, if you do have your phone up, well, after this webinar, to check it out. Yeah. The third element moving along of what constitutes an effective digital presence, really don't only speak to your current followers right now. This is a fantastic time to reach new audiences who may not have previously tapped into and start cultivating those relationships for the future. There are sort of three things we find most effective in growing new audiences, and this is all visible through Albright Knox and Buffalo. First, allow people to contribute to your content. Every year, Albright Knox encourages their followers to recreate a work of art from their collection. This Frida Kahlo recreation on the left is a great example of that. And it's effective because you've created a one-on-one relationship with them. You've showed them who you are as a resource in the community, and people are more drawn to you now. Another great way to continue growing your audiences, always be linking to your website from your social media platforms. And this post, Albright Knox is, discussing a work of art in their collection, but what they do well is they put the URL back to their website where they can learn more about the work. So creating those opportunities for engagement across multiple platforms is fantastic. And then going to the core of what social media is social. It is meant to be a community resource. So actively like other people's content, retweet, as we have in this example with the Martin House, comment on other people's posts, really get your organization's name out there by contributing to your community.
And
so Hil, I'm just wondering, go ahead, Josh, yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say, so Hil, I mean, you launched an artist's Instagram account last week, maybe a week and a half ago, and a lot of the community engagement, you know, was the reason why she has over 10,000 followers now. So really, that community engagement is really key to building your followers and building your engagement.
Yep.
Sorry, Mara, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I guess my question was, there just feels like there's so much to keep track of right at this time, and I just wondering what can organizations do to keep their work forefront of our minds.
Yeah.
And as you said, like cut through, right? It's just the deluge.
Yep, you're absolutely right. There is, as I said early on, there is so much content and information being shared right now. So the lifespan of it is decreasing day by day. I think it goes well with this fourth point, actually. Having a consistent message across all platforms and creating multiple opportunities for people to engage with you. We call these multiple digital touch points. You know, it's likely that your followers on social media are different than your visitors to your website, and might be different than your email. Of course, there is some overlap, but they are not always the same. So really taking what you're doing and amplifying it across all platforms as much and as frequently as you can is super effective. In this example here, the Apollo Theater in Harlem launched Apollo Cares, which is a resource. The information was made available right on their homepage. It was pushed out a couple of times over email as well, and it's also being pushed out over social media. So again, promoting across all available platforms, really telling your audiences as much as you can what opportunities are available for them to engage is how you're going to cut through the crowd. You need to really take that proactive stance right now.
So here, I have a quick question about what you just mentioned about audiences and the different audiences on different platforms. Are you finding that with this sort of in the last 3 weeks, with the sort of more digital fatigue setting in, you're finding audiences gravitating more to social than email, or does it depend on the audience?
Yeah, we're going to touch this in greater detail, but sort of give a preview of it. To your point, it depends on the audience. Much of it has to do with sort of the age demographic and the interests. What we have started to see, however, is people find email more personal because it's something that you have opted into. And so people are actually asking to receive that information. So we have started to see more engagement on email in particular right now.
Okay, so we do have a question from the audience. And I think you've spoken to part of it, but just wanted to double check on this. From Jurina Ribbons, we cannot possibly do every platform. Can we just concentrate on one or two? And what would you recommend?
Yes, I love that question. Thank you for asking. And we'll also get to this a little bit later on. You can absolutely just focus your efforts on 1 to 2 platforms. We actually ask organizations that we work with as well, what is working well right now? And can you lower or phase out the other platforms and redirect your energy to those platforms? Determining which platform that is really does involve looking at your metrics, looking at who is following you, if that's email. But I do encourage you to take that time to sort of understand which one is the best platform and see if you can achieve all your goals on it and then slowly phase out the other ones.
Great. So build out where you're already leading, basically.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you.
Great. So those are the 4 main most main things to keep in mind for an effective digital presence. I do also want to quickly touch upon messaging in this environment. Across any platform, of course, right now be very cognizant and aware and sensitive about the impact COVID-19 has had on communities. However, the health crisis does not need to be emphasized in all your communications. I personally have seen and received many messages and remarks that have phrases such as "in spite of these circumstances," "wishing for health and safety," and these are incredibly important and heartfelt, but we have been inundated with them since late March. What we really want to be doing moving forward, starting now, is anchoring communications in concrete solutions. I think this is really well represented in this example from Albany Center Art Gallery. It says, "Let's make art." It's a clear call to action. It's providing a solution, and it's moving the individual from reader to someone who can now engage.
Great.
Before we get into the next section, I see some questions that are coming in. Perhaps not. Okay. Well, continue to please send questions.
So I think a good one came in from an anonymous attendee. Many
Okay.
of our organizations are small without broadcast production staff. How do we polish our virtual broadcast programming with limited staffing and resources? And I know you're going to get into this in a little bit, but I think it's a really key question.
Yes, I love that question. Thank you, anonymous person, for asking it. Thinking about your capacity, definitely. I think what's really great is that there are so many tools out there already that allow you to create digital design broadcasts and graphics and assets at very low cost. And many of these are drag and drop sort of features. So WeVideo is a great example. Of course, Canva for all the production for those videos. Those are very simple templates that you can make on there. And then also thinking about where you're hosting these broadcasts, Facebook does have effective ways where you can do live streams simply by integrating through YouTube. So I think starting with some of the basic elements like WeVideo and Canva, and then also looking into Facebook to host these events are a great opportunity.
And I have one more question for you before we move on from Caitlin Davey. Your thoughts on using the same content on both Facebook and Instagram? Too repetitive?
Not at all. I think you can use the same content, just be cognizant of what time you are posting them. If you're going to share the same post, don't share it at the same time. And ideally, don't share it at the same day. If you've already built out content for a week, see if you can spread one post out on one day and you can reshare that post maybe 3 days later. So totally acceptable to reshare content, just spread it out throughout the week.
Thank you.
Great. So I want to do a deeper dive now into your website. I can confidently say probably that 90% of you do have some sort of website. And regardless of our current situation, your organization's website still does serve as the most important communications platform, more than email or social media, in fact. And so although what you are communicating now is certainly different than what you normally share, remember that your mission as an organization hasn't changed. So if you are going to be making updates to your website, ask yourself first what the goal is of that update, and then figure out if you can provide that information other platforms or other resources as well. At this moment, we can confidently say that there are 3 main updates to consider making to your website. These are sort of changes we have been seeing implemented across the arts and culture industry right now to help you engage with your constituents longer term. The first one is clearly making your status on your opening or your closing visible on your homepage. Ideally, you're going to have this information somewhere on your homepage. We recommend having this in a banner with the opportunity for somewhere to link to. We have this example here from Torrance Space in Buffalo. They effectively placed it in their banner. It's clearly visible, but it also doesn't overtake the site. And thinking, in the future, we will get to a point where one day we do reopen these spaces, and these banners are an effective location to communicate your reopening plan to audiences. It is important to clearly communicate those plans when you do have information available, so your patrons know you're thinking about their safety as well. The second most important update to consider making to your website right now, sharing and displaying the resources you have available prominently and effectively on your homepage. There's a statistic that says 55% of people who visit your site actually spend less than 15 seconds on it. Your homepage is the first point of contact for these site visitors, so you need to give them a reason to stay. If it is crowded with COVID or canceled messages, it is not actually adding any value to them. So really link to resources you have directly on the homepage. And remember that resources, yeah, they can be programs you may have newly developed in response to the situation, but they can also be links to your social media accounts. They can be past images, album collections, performance excerpts, critical reviews. You have more resources than you probably think right now, and those are all, the homepage is a great way to really display that to your audiences. And the last thing that I'm sure you may already be thinking about, you may already have this on your website, but now is a great time to have email signups and pop-ups. As we, again, do all plan for reentry, email pop-ups are a great way to ask audiences to opt in for those reopening updates. It's a great tactic, but also make sure if you are using that call to action, you do follow up on that promise and you do provide that information. And in addition to email signups, think about social icons if those aren't already on your homepage as well. And so I want to...
Yeah, I just want to underscore just a personal experience of mine, which is I was hoping to visit Falling Water this summer, and while they're not open right now, they did invite me to indicate which dates I might be interested in attending, and I was just really surprised and heartened by that.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to make some of these updates to your homepage, especially so that information is visible. Again, people are going to see that first, so if you can communicate that to them in the most effective way possible, that's best.
Great.
I want to sort of put this into practice now and talk through some examples. This is Nassau County Museum. This is their homepage. We think this is a great example. They have an effective and concise statement right in the middle that indicates they're closed. In that green box where it says Museum from Home in the top left, they've directly linked to resources that individuals can engage with directly. And thinking about that messaging, Museum from Home, I'm sure if you even have scrolled on social media, you may have already seen this as a hashtag. This is messaging that the arts and culture landscape at large is leaning into right now. So thinking about that community you're developing and tapping into that, it's great. This example on this slide, this is actually a mock-up we created of a real website based on what we've seen some cultural organizations do. So yes, you need to be providing the statement that you are closed, but it should not be the only thing on your website. And it should not be in red characters and in a special box right in the middle. As Advance NYC actually mentioned in their webinar last week, donors continue to give in times of good and bad. So it's still important to give donors a reason for why they should give now. Making resources or ways audiences can engage visible right on your homepage tells donors why you need their support. And so really, going back to the last example right here, where they do have the donation button, but it's buried under opportunities for engagement. And I do recommend, if you haven't had a chance to view the fundraising webinar, it's on NYSCA's website to view it after. Another great page, this is from Clay Art Center in Rochester. This is a landing page. So these COVID-19 resource landing pages are something we have been seeing more and more of. It does look a bit small on the slide right now, so we encourage you to visit their site afterwards. But this layout is really an effective way of compiling all the center's resources in a central location. And if you actually see on the top, they've made this landing page visible on their menu bar. So again, it's something that you can see right when you visit their website. And thinking about how this landing page also operates, once this page is built, you can promote this on social media, it can be shared on email, and it can really serve as a collection of everything you are doing now to support your community.
So yeah, we do have a question.
Yep.
So we have a few. So one, I just wanted to make an announcement that this presentation will be available with audio and the deck We're hoping to put it up on our website today. That will be an archive that we're building for all of our for all the NYSCA Presents webinars. So just FYI, that was from Anna. Lorraine O'Donnell asked, as one of the few who hasn't been furloughed in her organization, she loves all of this and feels a bit overwhelmed. What do you feel is the most important part of the engagement that I can do by myself?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great question. And I'm assuming, I can't assume actually, but if you're handling a digital platform, I think it goes back to that first question of first understanding which one is performing the best for you. Is it your website that's getting the most hits? Is it your social media accounts? Is it your emails? And then whichever platform is performing the best, that's where you should be directing most of your energy to. And from there, I would actually start to look for resources where templates are already built out for you. So that way you don't actually have to do the hands-on work. There's Canva, as we'll talk about in emails later. There are so many email templates that are already built out and designed for you to engage with. Landing pages like these also have, there's things like Squarespace and Wix that are simple and can integrate with your existing websites that already have content blocks like we see here. So really first identify what it is that you need to be sharing, where you already have your highest audience, and then look for platforms, third-party platforms that are very established like Canva, and lean into those as much as possible. And also look to your colleagues and see what they're doing as well. You can get a really great sense of that and where the trends are sort of going.
Okay, great.
And Sahil, I think quickly, just to jump onto that, I mean, it's really looking at what your goals are and then making a plan to do it that you can do consistently and effectively. So if it doesn't make sense to jump into a platform, if it's not something that you can sustain over time, obviously right now it's important to be online, but again, people are going to still be going online in the future. So it's something that you should be able to keep up and sustain.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you so much. I think you've answered most of this question, but I'll just share it quickly. From Eric Sopra-Casa, what do you think about Facebook versus Instagram versus Twitter versus YouTube? Is any platform being used mostly by nonprofits that is also being used by specific audience?
We will get into this a little bit more
when we get to the social. Okay.
But just to give a quick overview to the second part of that question, if there are other platforms that audiences are leaning into, we have seen some cases where organizations are going into TikTok now to really reach that younger demographic. But really, arts organizations are still primarily on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And Instagram is the leading force right now because it is a visually oriented platform.
Thank you.
Great. Moving along to the next section. Email. As I mentioned early on, emails are important. Remember that individuals have opted in and they've actually taken the steps of giving you their contact information because they want to be receiving news from you. Still remember that although emails are more effective, the average span of reading is still approximately 11 to 13 seconds, and that's actually only if the individual opens the email to begin with. As arts and culture organizations, your email marketing should still continue as it normally would for an in-person or online event. We found that just because we are in this crisis, it does not mean you stop sharing the core information you've always been providing to your audiences, how to stay connected with you, how to engage, and really what you're up to behind the scenes as well. They're the most successful emails that we've seen cut through inbox clutter and really reach audiences right now, however, have a few things in common. Consistency in layout structure, consistency in frequency, and really optimize subject lines and send times. So I want to draw attention to this example to the right. The North Carolina Museum of Art has actually been sending emails with recommendations for a work of art to engage with from their collection, as well as some other activities in the email while the museum has been closed. Every week, these emails look very consistent and identical to each other. The left side and the right side are from different weeks, but they both have that blue banner that says NCMA recommends at top. They have some language following that, explaining what their initiative is, and then they go directly into the work of the week. So really what this is doing is this consistent email layout is providing audiences with familiarity of what they can expect from you moving forward. And in turn, those audiences are actually going to be coming back and engaging more. We did touch upon this briefly, talking about MailChimp and other platforms like Moosend or Constant Contact, but really to create a consistent email layout, just like NCMA, there are a number of user-friendly platforms that have templates already built out and where you only have to drag and drop images or copy. And thinking right now, in this moment, we are all handling multiple jobs, wearing multiple hats. Email templates are a great way to help alleviate some of the workload for those who are doing multiple things right now during this crisis. I want to touch upon now subject lines. If you think about your email subject line when you wake up in the morning and see it, what you decide on clicking in your email is heavily in regards to what the subject line says. It is one of the most important indicators of whether someone will open your email or not. And ideally, the subject line does need to directly correlate with what is inside of your email and spark some sort of curiosity. We have found that organizations who have a call to action like NCMA recommends can increase their open rates up to 2 times more right now. And at the same time, thinking about subject lines, it's important to also think about sending emails on a consistent basis. I think what's really fascinating about this NCMA case study is that they are sharing this recommendation email every Friday, and they have been doing so since we started quarantine in April, late March. We found that for small organizations, even spending 2 to 3 emails per month is effective, and for larger organizations, sending 1 per week is ideal. Of course, again, we are cognizant of everyone's limited time, especially now. So the goal is to send whatever number works for you. But as Josh mentioned, to be able to do that on a consistent basis longer term. The last thing here, you can see that the email was sent at 10 a.m. There's been lots of research right now determining what is the optimal send time for emails. And what we're seeing across the board right now is actually individuals will engage and continue to engage with emails at all times of the day. But from a certain number of studies, we found by and large that between 6 to 10 a.m. and 12 to 3 p.m. are prime time for email opens and engagement right now. So I'm going to walk through a couple examples again to put this into practice. The word to describe all these DMA emails is consistency. This is the Dallas Museum of Art. They are sharing these emails week after week, and they are consistent in their logo, the banner that says Museum Mondays, and if you actually take the time to read these emails, the content itself. Again, as we saw with NCMA, keying your audience in right now into what they can expect, especially during a time of uncertainty, is really effective in digital communications. Another great example is from Marlene Myers from JCC in Manhattan. Again, it starts with your weekly dose of positivity. This is a hook that the organization is using on a consistent basis. And what's great about this is, especially now when times are challenging, this positivity can really serve as a moment of respite. I do also want to call attention to the second arrow you see at the bottom. What's effective in this email is that it's providing lots of information actually, and you should be empowered to be packaging up 2 to 3 different important components in one email, but it needs to read clean. So this faint line that you see across really separates out, and it's not just reading as one block of text. So if you can only do 1 email, for example, per month, make sure you're separating that out and you're providing as much value as you can to your audiences. So I'm sure you can tell right off of the back why these emails aren't as effective. I want to say these are actually all real email examples. To the left, clearly it's difficult to read. The font size is small. Remember, if someone is only spending 13 seconds on average reading an email, you need to be able to deliver that information in the most easy to read and digestible format possible. The middle email, it does actually separate out multiple pieces of information, but again, small font. dark color and the images aren't properly sized, so it's going to look broken on mobile versus desktop. And to the right, donation asks are good and they should be shared, but they should be shared with other information for your readers to engage with. Again, as we talked about with the website, you need to make donation asks on digital platforms, at least buried in with some sort of resource, even if it's a Instagram account that you're linking to or a YouTube page, to really provide value and incentive to your audiences.
Great. Also, I'm just wanted to shout out to our audience that we are getting a lot of questions. We're going to try to accelerate the presentation a little bit so that we can get to some of them at the end. And we're also going to be able to respond to you after the webinar. And we're figuring out how we're going to do that, but know that we will get back to you. Okay, yep. Thanks.
Great. So moving along then to social media. We touched upon this again early on, but social media really is the most active tool at your disposal right now, especially for arts and culture organizations. Instagram is the most widely used platform in order to reach these audiences. I want to call attention to this example, the National Cowboy Museum in Oklahoma. If you haven't heard, they have been able to grow their audiences by hundreds of thousands of followers since we went into physical distancing. And the story behind this is when the museum closed, head of security, Tim, pictured here, was one of the few individuals left on site. He essentially took over the museum's social media accounts, posted from his perspective about works in the collection, facts about the West and cowboys, his adventures in the gift shop, and much more. Images were taken from himself using the device he had. He shared his own copy. The content was never overproduced. It was genuine, and it really garnered national attention. What we can really learn from Tim's example and the Cowboy Museum boils down to 4 key things. First, are you communicating a story and not just the end product? Is what you're sharing different than what others are sharing? Are you providing a distinct point of view in your content like Tim has shared? Second, is what you're sharing done on a consistent basis? It is better to share 1 tweet per week forever versus sharing only 10 tweets. And as we touched upon earlier, recognize that you don't need to be on all 3 major social media platforms. For an organization of any size, if you are having considerable growth and engagement on one platform, optimize and spend your time on there because that's clearly where your audiences are. Third, don't always be posting about the same thing. Mix it up with 2 to 3 different things to share. Find your most unexpected object or feature and post about that. If you're a museum, this could mean sharing your oldest work in the collection, videos you have, images from your past visitors. And lastly, and perhaps the most important, follow and engage in art and culture trends. Take the time to see what's trending on social media and share content around that. Right now, the most commonly used hashtags in arts and culture are Museum from Home, Art Can Help. Last week, we celebrated Museum Week. We saw a ton of content surrounding that. And don't forget that you also have anniversaries you may have celebrated in the past. Maybe it's your 5th anniversary of the first day of your production. That's also engaging content and distinct to you.
Great.
So I want to move along to really put some examples into practice. This tweet from Rubin Museum. So the Rubin Museum had created a landing page on their website with mental health resources. It's an important tool they're providing, so they pushed it out on social media channels. So again, determine what's important on your website and proactively and consistently share it on your social media platforms. And you can also see that they leverage Art Can Help, so really leaning into those hashtag trends. Another great example from Park Avenue Armory. This tweet is a great example of what ended up being a canceled performance, which then the Armory turned into an opportunity to continue focusing on the organization's mission, really by using the videos and images and clips that they already had and still giving viewers that experience. Also note that they did link back, again, creating that multiple engagement for linking back from social to website to video, super important and effective. This is an example from Public Theater. they are having a virtual event where they will live stream performances. We Are One Public. It's going to happen on June 1st, and it's essentially serving as an online fundraising event. This event is taking place on Facebook, YouTube, and website, but they promoted it as well on Instagram and Twitter. What's great about this is that they did have a donation ask in this post, but it wasn't the core focus. The core focus was the event. So when you are making a donation ask on social media, make sure it's part of a broader opportunity for your audiences to be engaged with.
Great.
Another great example, Rochester Fringe Festival. You can clearly see that they said Happy World Theater Day. So finding what those broader arts and culture days are, looking at the images you have available and seeing if you can post on those days. I know at the end of this month, we actually have National Tap Dance Day and National Creativity Day. Those are all great moments to be sharing social media content around.
I also think this is terrific because the Rochester Fringe Festival takes place towards the end of, I think it's early fall, sort of towards the end of summer, and they're capitalizing on World Theater Day to remind me, thinking about what's upcoming, and that I definitely want to try to attend that in the fall, right? Yep. So they're using a hook, even though they're not really, open in any way right now.
Absolutely. And just lastly, I want to talk about two things not to do. Obviously, two things not to do on social media. Obviously, moving forward, new physical distancing guidelines and plans are going to have to be in place, and you should be communicating that on social media, but they should be done very carefully and thoughtfully. Do not share your updates in the form of a graphic like to the left or that eye-popping red text. Ideally, when you do share those updates, they would be images of your building. And if you don't have a physical space, works of art, sculptures, outdoor spaces, your stage. And then also think about, if you are sharing images with crowds of people, make sure it is clearly dated as pre-COVID. Again, you want to be mindful and thoughtful that we are all in this situation right now, and you don't want to create any mixed signals when you're sharing these assets.
And also, Sohail, just to jump in, when everybody's thinking about and planning for reentry, one of the core things that you're going to need to think about is that trust bond that you've built with your audiences. So they need to feel safe. They need to feel comfortable when they're coming back. So showing an image of large crowds may not necessarily be the most comfortable thing and the most comfortable kind of imagery to put out there, unless, as Sohail said, it's effectively dated.
Yep. Great. I know that was a lot of information. And so before we wrap up and take time for questions, I just want to reiterate the top things that you can think about and actionably do on digital platforms right now, as well as beyond. Clearly communicate your status and continue to update that status as it evolves on your website. Make your resources, however big or small they are, easily visible on your homepage. Individuals won't know you have them to engage with if you don't actually show them. And then continue to share those resources and opportunities across email and social media. Of course, frequent is better, but do it at a consistent basis that works for you. And then remember that your audiences are still coming to you because they are already invested in you and they are interested in what you have to say. So share and lean into that. Remember, you don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Great,
we can open the floor to questions.
Yep, and thank you. We have many great questions. Thank you for all of these. And so I'm going to take it from the top. We have from Tomoko Kawamoto. What is a good open rate for emails?
Yeah. So the industry average is roughly, it ranges between 12 to 18%. However, you need to look at what your averages have been for your list in general and compare that benchmark. Again, multiple different kinds of emails. The industry average is only good so far as what you have been averaging over a long haul. So that is the industry average, but I would, of course, also, if you're not up to par with that, test and experiment with different send times and send days. Try these new send times that we discussed today as well.
Okay, and I think along those same lines from Yannick Pazé, what time should we post and publish? Do you recommend to post at different times if we are using multiple platforms?
I'm going to assume this is in regards to social media. In terms of posting right now, we're seeing the most engagement on social media across all three platforms, so Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, between 9 to roughly 11 a.m. and then in afternoon around 4 to 6 p.m. for highest engagement.
Great, thank you.
But again, I think it is keeping in mind that trial and error that Sohail spoke about. Yeah. So if you're trying something and it doesn't work during those time periods, try other time periods and see. And it takes a couple days. It can take a week, and you can look at the curves as they go throughout the week and see what actually makes sense for your audience and your organization.
Yep.
Okay. From Brianna Vasquez, in regards to consistency, do you think that they should be weekly? Is weekly better than bi-weekly?
I'm going to assume this is for emails or even in social media. Weekly is, of course, better. If bi-weekly is what's possible, that's also just fine, so long as you are doing it for the long haul 6-month, 1-year period. Weekly is better, but bi-weekly is just as fine.
Okay, and so, Sohail, do you want to talk about if you're talking about the content, weekly, if it's just one line of text, is not nearly as effective as, you know, an image or a video with some kind of context around it that's going out. So again, it is keeping in mind what you have, what resources you have, what your capacity is, and making sure that what you do put out there is good content as well.
Yeah.
So this is from Anonymous. We sometimes, I think it sounds like that they're sometimes trying to figure out whether maintaining consistency or maintaining quality is a priority, which to prioritize. If we don't have much happening, would you suggest we come up with something to fill it, or should we not post and sacrifice our consistency?
I would.
Great question.
A great question, and it's something that we have discussed at length. There's sort of two parts. Obviously, you want to be only providing high value and quality information to your audiences. At the same time, thinking about how algorithms operate, the more you post, the more your content's going to rank. I think there is a middle ground though. If you don't have your own content to be sharing, look for opportunities to be resharing other people's content, because that's still included as a retweet is a tweet, for example. So find that middle ground. Ideally, you should be aiming for consistency though. But if you can't, of course, step down a bit. You can sort of lower the frequency you are sharing at. Maybe instead of doing 1 per week, you're doing 1 per month.
Great, thank you. Josh, do you want to answer the question from Cindy Boyer?
Yeah, Cindy asks, how honest and open can we be about uncertainty? We get questions about programs in July, September, October, et cetera, and we just don't know, but we're planning. So I think the short answer to that is be honest. It's better to go out and say we're still in the planning phases at this point. You can say we're hoping to do this and that, but I wouldn't promise anything and then have to go back on it. But be honest. Everybody at this point, nobody knows. There's no silver bullet. Nobody knows what's actually going to be happening in 6 months from now or in 4 months from now. We're all still finding out. But you know, there will be a new normal, and I think you can just be honest about it, but also just not give as details that you don't know or you're not certain about yet. So in short, yes, I think you can be honest about it, but just be circumspect, be concise, and don't make any promises.
Right. And I think back to Sohail's earlier point, if you signed up for our email updates, we'll be in touch with you as soon as we have information.
Exactly.
Great. Okay. Let's see. This is from Anonymous. How do you recommend keeping up with trending hashtags? For example, ensuring that we don't miss events like Giving Tuesday or National Tap Dancing Day.
Yep. Great question, Anonymous. The most effective way to do this actually is just look at the sort of largest performing art centers and museums and seeing what they're posting, because they are sort of the trendsetters, and they're going to be sharing that, and then you will be able to see. So even if it's spending 30 seconds on Instagram, just looking at the top 5 to 6 organizations, that's one way. Also, another great resource is the International Council of Museum. They have a lot of this information on their website for use as well, across disciplines.
So Hill, I have a quick question for you, and this may or may not be relevant, but I know marketing budgets and budgets in general are all very tight and kind of changing. In terms of social media, what do you think about paid versus organic right now?
Yeah, great question, because we are, again, everyone is doing an organic push right now, but we are starting to see organizations do paid spends, even $1 per day just boosting a post, especially if you are promoting perhaps an event or an initiative or an online fundraising event. Boosting very small dollar amounts for that can be effective to reach audiences. But be very aware of what it is that you're promoting and if it's actually going to help you in the long run. But this is something that we have started to see at the very low spend.
Okay, great. I have a quick one from another anonymous. What size font do you recommend using in emails?
Oh, that's a great question. First, we need to find out which email CMS that you're using, CRM that you're using. But the most effective way to figure this out is writing the email and sending a test to you and seeing what that looks like on mobile. Generally, font 12 to 13 is acceptable, but it looks different on everyone's computer. So you really do need to test that one out on multiple platforms, desktop, mobile.
Okay. And then another anonymous, we are a very small organization with limited capacity and no formal communication staff. Do you have any tips? And I imagine what they're asking for is, what should we prioritize?
Yeah, and I think Josh probably has some thoughts on this as well. From a digital perspective, one, if you are a small organization, first identify if you have a community of people who are already on social media. Maybe it's artists that your organization supports. Figure out what platform they are on, and then consider if it's worth your energy and time to go on that platform and build a community there. And I think Josh can probably speak more on the earn side.
No, I think you covered it.
Okay.
Okay. So another question. Some email examples that were written in the first person. Can you tell us more about the use of the first person in these communications?
Yeah. So some emails are in the format of a letter, whether it's from a director or a curator. Thinking about personalization right now, to cut through the crowd, people are drawn to humanity right now, and that means writing in the first person. Mm-hmm. So emails that are in the first person are generally those longer form sort of messages and notes from those staff. But there's sort of a middle ground between those and sort of general third person newsletters. It depends what your goal is with the newsletter and who it's coming from as well to think about what sort of person to use.
Right. Okay, great. Here's another one. What is your advice for dealing with impatient, insensitive patrons who are requesting immediate answers from us when we don't know ourselves? Do you respond or ignore? Maybe that's also for Josh too.
Sahil, do you want to jump in first and I can follow?
This is a great question, and I think it's something that lots of organizations are still trying to figure out. What we have seen is some statements have been generated, general statements like, please be in touch for more updates soon, and we've seen those being communicated. But I would also say that if you don't have the full answer right now, you can just say that you are working on it, and that you will get back to them when that moment arises. Again, back to the email idea, when you have more information, you will send it to them. I think being upfront about that right now is extremely helpful.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, you need to give, you don't want to go dark now. You want to give information that you have. It's important to engage, and it's important to acknowledge that folks are actually reaching out to you because they want to engage with you if they're asking. If patrons or donors are asking you for that sort of information, that's a good sign because they're engaged with you. But you don't have to feel the pressure to answer something that you don't have. And as long as you say, that this is something that we're planning on, this is, please reach back out or sign up for email, please engage with us online, and we'll make sure that as soon as we have more information to give. That's clear.
Great. Continuing the dialogue, right? Really important, especially for that continued ownership. Because again, you're thinking about now, but you're also thinking about the future. And right. It's a way, whether it's a patron that you've had for a long time or whether it's somebody that for the first time, they want to come and visit you. You want to build that relationship for the long haul, not just for now. Right, great, thank you. Here's another one. We are an organization with a mission to develop young actors. Is it good or strange to highlight other organizations' content that feature our alumni? Or would it be confusing from a branding perspective?
I think, no, I think if you're doing it sort of on the low end, if you're maybe doing it once a week or a couple times per month, that is actually great because you're building a community with that other platform. I would recommend you do that. Just be cognizant and make sure that it's not the only thing you share and that you are providing your own content as well.
Okay, great. If we haven't responded to your questions today, we will do so after the webinar in some format. So please keep them coming, and we really appreciate your being with us today. I want to thank Soheil and Josh and everyone who joined us today. I think we have over 400 attendees. We will post this presentation on our website later today, and we will hope to see you at our next webinar, which is on June 3rd. We're presenting in partnership with Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts. And on that one, we will cover legal issues and risks associated with expanding your online presence as an artist or arts organization. And we'll send out an email with more details today. We want to encourage you to share, as has been mentioned today, we want to encourage you to share the links to our webinars with any of your colleagues who might appreciate the subject matter but were unable to attend. On a housekeeping, I have a housekeeping matter for NYSCA, which is I'd like to remind everyone that the application for NYSCA's NEA CARES grants are now live. The application does close on Tuesday, May 26th at 4 p.m. And also with CARES funding from the NEA, we recently announced a Keep New York State Creating Artists Grant opportunity in partnership with the New York Foundation for the Arts. So please go to their page, and that application will go live on June 9th. And always you can visit our website for continuing information about these opportunities and more. And I do want to give a shout out to our staff at this point to say thank you for your incredible work on behalf of our field. Our staff remains at all times ready to respond to all that is going on with you, with your grant opportunity. So thank you for reaching out to them, and I thank them for being so supportive and responsive in every way as we work together apart right now. We are very far apart. And while our state is reopening and we are beginning the path to recovery, the NYSCA team is so well aware of the immense challenges that lie ahead. And so we stand with you on this path together. We thank you. Be safe and be well. Thank you for joining.